Okay.
Alright, we're at Redland High School on Friday. The event is tomorrow, but it's like 4 o'clock. We loaded in at 3. Well, we're still setting up, but we loaded the truck in. They were really nice and they installed some nice power for us. So we're running that. And it's very similar setup to last year, just a little more lighting. But the big difference is using MLA Mini, the same rig we used at Dell Night Out this past year, in 2019. And we do need the output here. But I'll talk more about that later. We're gonna keep setting up. Some of you may be wondering why we're using a line array system at a meager high school dance. Why are we doing this? Is it complete overkill? Are we just trying to show off? Or maybe we upsold the client because we're trying to make more money? Well, normally at high school events, we use a pair of Martin Audio CDD Live 15s. They're fantastic. They sound excellent. They're really easy to deploy. Crazy loud for their size, great value. We love them. And if you want more information, we have like a rambly first impressions video on our channel, and a review will be coming at some point. However, at this event, we used a pair of Martin Audio MLA Mini systems, which each consist of a powered 15-inch sub, which is then the power plant for 4 MLA Mini array cabinets. We have used CDD Live 15s at larger events than this one. Higher capacity high school dances, college dances, outdoor events, and even some legitimate small EDM concerts. So given that CDD Live 15s were allowed enough for all those things, why are they not sufficient at this high school event? Well, the simple answer is that they're just not loud enough. But if they were loud enough at all those events, why are they not loud enough at this event? We have used CDD15s for this client at this event twice in the past. And here is some footage from last year's event where we used a pair of CDD15s, and the audience is actually slightly smaller. This school's students are the loudest audience per capita we have ever done a production for. It's uncommon how much they scream and how loud they do it. For those of you who don't know, the most critical production part of these events is the section called the Rave, where essentially all these high schoolers come together and we do an EDM rave, which is supposed to be really loud and like a concert experience. The problem is these students aren't going to a concert. They're approaching this with the attitude of just raging and being crazy. And so they're not listening to the music like a normal concert audience would, where they're not literally shouting as loud as they can all the time. You could hear in that footage that on the drop, you could barely hear the music. And that was when the CDDs were being pushed harder than we normally push them for high school events. You might think it's their choice to scream over the music, and we should not bring an overkill system, but we just disagree with that entirely. And in fact, immediately after this happened last year, we went to the client and mentioned our dissatisfaction with the quality of the speakers, and they immediately were on board. And in fact, they said to us, without me telling them, they said, yeah, we need louder speakers. And so they were totally game for us to bring a more appropriate system for them this year. So at this point, we were pretty much approaching with the mental philosophy of literally doing an EDM concert volume event, not a loud high school dance. We're just gonna run it like a concert. And that's what we had calibrated for during sound check. But then you'll notice in the next clip, they were really loud again over the drop. So we actually turned it up even more. And we thought this might be a problem. So Alex actually made a point of this during even just at soundcheck volume to talk to the client and the school administration about just how loud it is, and that we might have some chaperones that are concerned that it's too loud, and it's just an abnormally loud environment for a high school. We even had earplugs for all the chaperones. The client was totally on board with this, totally understanding, so was the administration. It was great, which was helpful because we did have to turn it up then after the first drop during the first rave because they're just that loud. And when you think about it, this is really not that overkill of a system anyway, given the size of the room. Yes, it's overkill for 400, 500 people, if you think of it that way, but this is still a fairly large space. So if you look at what any normal EDM production would bring, it would be a lot more than 4 per side MLA Mini or Kiva or DMB T-Series or whatever. It'd be, much larger line arrays, a ton more subs, which even in this case we needed more subs, but in the grand scheme of productions, this is not overkill at all. In the grand scheme of high school events, you might see it as overkill, but again, this audience is just absolutely crazy. I also hope at this point you've realized this was not an upsell or us trying to show off. And to that extent, this system was rented, but it was actually donated for free. Also, for those of you who don't know, these events are charity events, and so the vendor who provided the system literally did it at no cost, and we didn't upcharge or add a fee on top of that, so it didn't upsell in any regard to the client. I will also say though, that's not what we would normally do if we didn't have a loud enough speaker system. We would increase the budget, they would pay more, but for a charity event where they need a system that they can use appropriately but they can't afford it, well, we managed to get a really good deal for them. So that's awesome, but at a normal event, if the speakers aren't loud enough and they have a small budget, that's a different topic. Now, that's not to say that CDD15s aren't going to be good enough or loud enough for your high school events or other high school events. They certainly are. Like I said, we use them for those all the time. In fact, they're pretty much the cream of the crop, the best speakers you can buy within reason for a high school event or a college event or anything, up to a couple hundred people. And we even use them for like 700 people at some real EDM events. But here, we just needed a louder system. The MLA Mini system is fantastic. We got it for free, and it was plenty loud. We're not exactly sure how much headroom we had, but it was phenomenal. So with that in mind, just weigh that against your temptation to comment, "Rah, ridiculous system, 400 people, why would you use a pair of K12s," or whatever. And enjoy the rest of the gig log. Saturday. It's my battery in the watch died. 7:40. Starts at 8-ish. Alright, so yeah, it's 7:40. Starts at like 8. Not doing a whole lot of DJing. It's there's some background music, but there's a lot of activities in here this year. And then we're doing the raves. We're also doing Camp Hill Mini-thon also tonight. No gig log for that. It's a very basic setup. Here's a picture of it. And Logan and I are going to go there between 2 and 4. And we're going to do a rave set there. I'm talking quietly because we're taking a picture. So yeah, let's check in throughout the night. And hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to you about the whole setup. I wanted to do a rundown of the rig in person, but of course I didn't take the time to film that. So I figured the next best thing is to take a look at the lighting rig with this capture file that I have. It's not a complex or even particularly large rig by any means, but we think it's good because it hits all the key elements that are just important for what we want out of a light show at events like these. So we have these 8 Chauvet Intimidator Spot 355s for aerial effects, and well, I don't think I need to explain why we have moving heads. We also have 6 Chauvet Pix-Ms in this vertical configuration, kind of in the middle of the rig in terms of height. We use these for eye candy and some bright impact effects and things like that. Then we have this diamond, which has 8 ADJ UB 6H fixtures. The reason it's a diamond is because that's the logo for the client, and these just serve the same purpose as the Pix-Ms, just being eye candy, bright impact effects, and of course, like I said, being a logo. The most unusual part of this rig is probably this line of SlimPars. You don't really see people doing this kind of thing that frequently, but the reason we do it is because, well, for starters, we have a bunch of these SlimPars, and the other reason is because it gives us this really large canvas for chase effects. I mean, this is 30 feet long, and it also just adds eye candy at the top of the rig, which gives the rig some really nice height, as opposed to the Pix-Ms, which are more centralized. So this kind of just creates this nice framed off big wall of eye candy, which we think is really important. These aren't really used for impact effects because they're not bright enough. Yeah, really just eye candy and color. And then the last thing we have are these 8 Chinese generic RGBAW LED Pars. These are the only rented fixtures in the rig, but they are surprisingly bright and have a surprisingly wide beam angle. So we use them for like pseudo, blinder, and strobe effects. And the only reason we don't have real strobes or blinders is just because of budget. So you'll notice that we have a lot of other fixtures besides just moving heads, and you might think we could instead trade some of these for more moving heads, but we have a strong opinion about overly moving head heavy rigs because moving heads really don't give you eye candy or impact, which really makes your rig look a lot more full when you do have those things. That's not to say we couldn't have more moving heads here. We could easily add 8 beams and this would still be a very balanced rig, but without getting too far into it, we kind of feel like a good balance between moving heads and eye candy and impact is somewhere around like a 3-to-1 ratio. So for every moving head that you have, you kind of need 3 times as many fixtures for eye candy and impact. You might think that that's not the ratio going on here because of these 16 SlimPars, but in my mind, these are kind of like banks of 4. So if you add these up, it's more like 19 eye candy and impact fixtures against 8 moving heads, which is about 3-to-1 or 2-to-1, somewhere in that range. So that is the lighting rig. One more thing before we get back to the gig footage. The next clip you're going to see is from the second Rave, and I just wanted to say that you're going to notice that the crowd is a lot less energized. And for those of you who aren't familiar, mini-thons go for 12 hours long, and this was late in the night, so they're tired. But they're a little more abnormally lacking energy at this point. And this is because there was a student who got pretty severely injured, like really, really close in terms of time before the rave started. So they were all really down on morale, and we just had to do our best to keep them excited. So if you notice that the crowd is, I don't know, dead or not up to your standards, or maybe the first rave was much more exciting, just keep that in mind, that it's really late in the night, so they're already tired. Plus the fact that a friend of theirs was pretty severely injured, so they weren't very excited. So just keep that in mind.